We appreciate you guys and gals tuning in every Saturday morning. We're just kind of getting started here, and I want to let you know that we appreciate you tuning in every Saturday to see what's going on. And we were gonna have a huge show today, but I think we're still gonna have a big show. Unfortunately, my co-host for the day is not feeling too good, so we're gonna fly this thing solo this morning and see how you guys and gals like that. Appreciate you tuning in with us. If you'd like to get involved with the show, you can. 321-632-1000. That's 321-632-1000. And you can give us a call right here at the WWBC studios. I'd love to hear from you guys and gals, see what you've been catching out there, see if if you got any questions, anything like that. I'm not quite as prepared to fly solo this morning on the show as I would like to be, but we will make do as best we can. So hopefully you guys and gals will be enjoying the show. Want to talk about what's going on. It's springtime again. I know we said like 3 or 4 weeks ago that spring had sprung, right? Well, then winter crept back in just a little bit and kind of slowed everything down. So we had in the Indian River, Banana River, and Mosquito Lagoons, we had the drum spawn going on in late January and into the beginning parts of February, right around the full moon. And some of those schools, some of you guys and gals that got out on the lagoon system at that time, we had some beautiful weather days in late January after that super 2 weeks of 2 weeks of super cold weather we had. Those fish came out of the depths, started floating. Big schools, we had schools of sometimes you'd only find 100 or 200 fish in a school. Sometimes it was 500 fish in a school. And then we had 1 or 2 days where we had literally 1,500 to 2,000 fish, 30 to 50-pound drum that were schooling in the Indian River and Mosquito Lagoon areas. And so that activity's kind of settled down now. There are still some bigger drum around, but once they got done with their spawn, they've started heading north. And so they haven't been as readily available in that size class. Now, what sticks around? Those juvenile fish stick around all year. So we have black drum, as you guys and gals know that have listened to the show for the last couple of years. We have black drum from 1 or 2 pounds up to about 20 to 25 pounds that stay here year round. And those smaller fish like to hang around the mangroves. They like to hang around channel edges. They'll get schooled up on the flats and work together down the flats, especially once the water gets a little deeper. And the water this week has actually come back up about 6 or 7 inches. So that's really helping us. But those 15 to, well, let's call them, about 14, 15 up to 25-ish pound fish still like deeper water. They like to hold around the bridges. And so the O'Galley Bridge, the Melbourne Causeway Bridge, the Pineda Bridges across both Indian and Banana River, the 520 bridges, the 528 bridges. And as you go north, you've got the NASA Causeway Bridge, the Railroad Bridge. Haulover Canal is always a gathering area for fish. So when you look at these deeper water areas that are associated with structure, that's what those drum are wanting to be by. They like structure. They like areas of flow so that they can wait for a shrimp or a crab to be brought by them. And so those are the things that we've targeted this week on my charters, is looking for what is the weather going to give us this day. And whenever the weather's been calm enough, we've been fishing the bridges. And just this week, I have found fish. I found schools of black drum, and I fished all up and down the lagoon system. I found them in Haulover Canal. I found them at the Bears Cove, not Bears Cove, at the Max Brewer Bridge, the Titusville Bridge that goes over to the Space Center. I found them at the NASA Causeway Bridge. I found them at the 528 Bridge. And I've talked to 2 different captains that actually found them at the 520 Bridge on some days. Now, here's the thing. The drum aren't on every bridge every day. So you're not just going to pull up to the bridge and go, here's the school right here. I found them. I've marked them on my sounder and start fishing them. You're going to have to hunt for those fish. You're going to have to search around because they move up and down the bridge. They move from side to side well, along the pilings. So you're going to have to find it where they are. And then some days they'll be at one bridge, and then you go back the next day and they're not there anymore. And they've gone to another bridge. They've gone to another place. So they are moving around a lot at this time of the year as well. But if you're using cut crab or some large shrimp, those two things right now are really, really working well for these drum. And this week alone we had I guess our big fish was right in that 23, 24 pound range. Average fish on the bridges right now is probably somewhere between about 16 and 17 and about 20 pounds. That seems to be the majority of the fish that we're getting. So you're probably thinking, okay, where did the big drum go? Where are these things at? Well, the big drum, once they get to be about 30 pounds, 35 pounds, once the weather starts to warm, they start on their migration. So just like we have cobia migrating up the coast, triple tail migrating up the coast, dolphin, that migrate up the coast in the springtime, and various other species. As the water temperatures warm, they follow that gradient up. And these bigger drum, even though the small drums stay here year round, these bigger drum move up the lagoon system until they get to a point where they can't move up the lagoon system anymore. And then they, as an example, they'll move through the Banana River. They'll move through the Indian River. They'll eventually work their way over into the Mosquito Lagoon. They'll work their way north, and they'll get up to Ponce Inlet, hang around the inlet itself for a few days or maybe a week. And then the water temperature continues to warm, and so they go, okay, it's time for us to continue on our journey. And a lot of times these big drum will actually poke outside and get in the ocean and start working their way up, because where they're going to in the summertime, they're going to this, the Savannah Shipping Channel. They're going to the Pamlico Sound off of the Carolinas. They'll get in the Neuse River sometimes and work their way up through there. And eventually, the biggest of the fish will eventually work their way, those 60, 70, 80 pounders, they seem to travel the farthest. They'll go from here all the way up to the Chesapeake Bay. And that's where they summer, is up around Virginia and Maryland in the Chesapeake. The same as our cobia do. We have our cobia season is just starting. In fact, I was washing my boat yesterday, and my next door neighbor's cobia bush is in full bloom. So you know what that means. It's time to get out there and do some searching and some looking around. Tomorrow are going to be 2 good days to do it. Monday, the weather's going to kind of turn a little bit. It's going to be a little choppy and winds coming out of the north. You're not going to see free swimmers. You're not going to see manta rays in those conditions. You might catch them on the reefs, but those cobia are moving north. And so in the summertime, cobia and black drum and stripers are the 2 to 3 most prominent species that you find up in the Chesapeake. But we are fortunate enough that they winter here in our lagoon systems many times. Now, here's the cool thing about what happened in the end of January with those fish getting together and spawning. As they spawn, obviously they're putting millions and millions of juveniles into our lagoon system here. And that's something, we haven't had water quality that's been good enough for a number of years for them to do that. They just didn't want to stay here. They found other areas down towards Sebastian, down towards Fort Pierce, where the water quality was better. But this year, with those drum all being able to spawn throughout the Indian, Banana, and Mosquito, I think next year and the year after, you're going to start to see another, I would say a bloom, if you will, of juvenile black drum showing up around the shorelines, because these fish are going to grow and stay here. They're not going to leave for at least 5 or 6 years. It takes about 6 years before they get to the point where they'll start to migrate up and down the coast like those other ones we were just talking about. So we've seen some really, really interesting things going on this year with the black drum in the lagoons. Everything that I see indicates that we're going to have better and better years on drum and more drum throughout the year to be able to target. So those are all positives. Some of the schools that I'm finding, right now have got 40 and 50 fish in them. Every once in a while, you'll find a school that has 100. I was in Haulover Canal the other day and was using my side scan and found a school of about 100 fish. and stayed on those fish for a little while. But most of the schools are going to be of 100 fish or less throughout the year, but there's going to be more and more and more of them. So that's really cool. Really, really, really like the fact that we are going to have black drum for the next couple of years, barring any huge, apocalyptic type of die off. And that's going to be, one of the things that I think is going to be able to keep the average angler busy catching fish on the flats and around the mangroves all year long if you want to target those fish. And it's super, super easy to be able to target them. There's no rocket science to it. It's shrimp on a jig head. You put a shrimp on a jig head and you can catch a black drum. If they're around the bridges, a piece of cut crab on a jig head is typically the way to go about doing it. But those smaller fish that are 12 pounds and less, they eat shrimp like crazy. And so if you find a school, make sure you've got some live shrimp on the boat and just a bare jig head, and you should be able to catch those fish pretty easily. So just keep an eye out for them when you get out there. The other thing that we've got some redfish that are starting to show up this week. In fact, I got some of the best redfish of the year this week. So I'm really excited about that. The south end of the Mosquito Lagoon, the middle part of the Mosquito Lagoon, the redfish really turned on. They're still in small pods and schools, so you can target those fish and stay with those fish. It's not just a single pole down the shoreline and pick off a single fish here and a single fish there kind of a scenario. It's still a schooling scenario. And in the south end of Mosquito Lagoon, we've still got plenty of black drum. So on those calm mornings, you can get out there and see those fish tailing, pushing wakes, doing all of those things that we like to see them do. So that's that. We have got a really, really good time here in the next couple of weeks. So that late February, early March time frame, the water's starting to warm up back up into the right around 70-degree mark. So yesterday it was about 69.5. The day before it was actually 70. But you're gonna find that as the water gets 72, 73, 74 in the next couple of weeks, first part of March, you're going to start to see a lot more redfish show up. And that's obviously a positive. The other thing we're going to talk about is right after the break. We're going to talk about the other thing that showed up this week. And you guys and gals are going to be excited about this because it's one of my favorite fish to catch, although it's one of the most challenging fish that you're going to see in the lagoon system, or you're going to try to catch in the lagoon system. But we're going to talk about that when I come back right after these messages, so don't go away. I'm Captain Jim Ross in the studio this morning, doing the show solo today, but hopefully you guys and gals will enjoy it, what we're talking about. I was just checking out on the Facebook feed here. We got a bunch of guys looking in this morning. Calvin Hall's on with us this morning. Who else have we got here? We've got William Stratton's on with us. Mike Delator's on with us. Carl Harmoning's on with us this morning. Cuz is on. Craig Lykin is on this morning with me. Orson Tarver's watching. Butch McCoy's on. Butch, if you get a chance, give us a call here. I'd like to get a report. I think that the Pompano and the Whiting are probably starting to run right now. I was going to see if you had seen anything going on. If you do, we'd love to hear from you. 321-632-1000 is the call-in line. Bo Bergeron is on with us this morning. Donald Waberman watching from the West Coast. Butch Kimball's on with us. Captain K is on with us this morning as well. And a whole lot more. We'll get back to some of you guys and gals here shortly that are watching on the Facebook feed. And like you say, if you have any questions, you can post them up right on the Facebook feed, and we'll try and answer them as well, because I've got plenty of time to fill today. Unfortunately. Excuse me. We were talking in the beginning segment of the show about the black drum and how good the black drum have been for us the last couple of years, but especially this spring. I had a friend of mine, Mike Shaw, stopped me on my way to the studio this morning. I was rolling down the street, and he was out walking his dog, and he waved me down. And he was saying, Mike's lived here as long as I have. He's lived here his whole life. He's actually a couple of years older than I am. And he was saying that he's seeing giant snook and big redfish in the river system right now. And he's like, I've never seen this kind of action. And I'm like, yeah, man. I said, that water quality has gotten so much better that we're actually getting these good quality fish in the lagoon again. But he's like, well, what do they eat? And I said, well, that's a secret. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit after we talk with Captain Jeff Kranick this morning. Good morning, Captain Jeff.
Good morning, Jim. How you doing there, buddy?
I'm doing good. Are you on the water this morning? It sounds like it.
Yeah, we are. I don't know where this wind came from, but they were calling for 5 last night. It's blowing a steady 15 out here.
Yep, 5 plus 5 plus 5. There you go. Now you've got it.
Yeah, weatherman got it. Just not enough.
You know, it's funny. They messed up the forecast so badly this week. 3 straight days in a row, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They absolutely couldn't have been farther off.
Well, give them day number 4.
Yep.
So,
yep.
The fishing hasn't been too bad, though. We got a big slot black drum in the boat. We just lost a nice snook. Broke off at the leader, so.
Sounds like the bite's going this morning.
Yeah, I just got off the phone with Capt. He's up at the port, and he's already got himself a 15-pound triple tail on board.
Nice. Very nice. Sounds like the bite is going good today.
Yeah, it's not bad. Just got to stay out of the wind.
Yep. Now, are you guys fishing in the Indian or the Banana River today?
We're down south.
Okay, down around Sebastian and stuff, huh?
Yeah, down around the inlet. Lot of offshore guys going out today. I think they're in for a big surprise once they break through the inlet.
Yeah, they probably won't want to run too far, at least not to start with, until this wind lays down a little bit.
Yeah, one of the guides was loading up to go out tile fishing. I just kind of giggled to myself. Those clients are going to get the snot beat out of them this morning.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is the buoy report this morning was only showing the 20-mile buoy was only showing 2 feet at 8 seconds, but 2 feet at 8 seconds with a 2 foot at 2 second chop on top of it doesn't make.
Yeah, there's actually a few whitecaps out here in the open water.
Yeah.
So
hopefully it calms down and lays down for you guys this morning.
Yeah. So we're kind of pre-fishing for Blair for a snook show. So for later in the week. So he's over at the Tampa Boat Show today.
Gotcha.
But, at least we're out here and not on the couch.
So you said you had a snook and a drum so far?
Yeah.
What's the magic bait today?
Popping corks.
Okay.
And shrimp.
Popping cork with a shrimp. Gotcha.
So a lot of boats. We got to the ramp about 15 minutes later than we wanted to be. And there was only a few parking spots left at the Grant ramp.
I dropped my truck off down at Boniface Hires yesterday to get the oil change, tire rotate done. And so I told my mom to meet me down there because they normally take about an hour to an hour and a half, to do that. And so we ran on down to Old Fish House yesterday.
Oh, and we were down there for dinner ourselves.
Did you? Oh, I must have just missed you. Well, when we got there at about 3 o'clock, let me just tell you, man, it was slap full of people, and the parking lot at Christensen's was slap full.
Yeah, there's somebody's doing an island party out there this weekend. I saw the boats as we were leaving. There's like half a dozen tied up on one of the islands.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just saw that there was a huge amount of business going on. Or, a lot of people down in that particular area yesterday. But
when's were you able to figure out when the Sea Safe Day is down there?
I believe it's the end of I don't remember, end of March or end of April. I've got to get that figured out. Okay. In fact, I need to talk with Derek Redwine about that because he's the one who contacted me about it. So maybe I
saw him put up a post yesterday, but there was no date.
Gotcha. I'm going to text him this morning and see if he can give us a call and let us know what's going on with that, because that's going to be a big event.
Well, John was supposed to call in today, just so everybody's aware. The Space Coast Ducks Unlimited banquet is tonight at the Palm Bay Senior Center off of Culver Road.
Okay.
And I know they're going to have some extra tickets. One of the sponsors paid for his table, but he's not showing up. He has someplace else to go, so there are seats available.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Guns this year, a lot of good stuff, John was telling me. So believe it kicks off around 5 o'clock, cocktail hour.
And where's that going to be at, Jeff?
The Palm Bay Senior Center on Culver Road there at 95 and Palm Bay.
Gotcha. Palm Bay Senior Center at Culver Road and 95.
Yes, sir.
And which chapter of DU is that?
Well, it used to be South Brevard, but what they did is the North chapter folded again, and they changed the name to Space Coast, and the regional director is just going to keep one chapter here.
Okay.
Rather than two, so we're taking up the whole county now. We kind of had a gentleman's agreement that when we were looking for prizes, we wouldn't go north of 520, and they wouldn't come south.
Understood.
So,
Understood.
But that's going to be a large time tonight. I'm hoping to get up there for a little bit. But if you got any other questions, just give me a call. I'll give John a call, too, see if he can call in.
And that's roughly, if I remember correctly, it's roughly $55 or $60 for a single ticket and like $100 or $110 or something like that for couples?
Right. And I think the menu is barbecue.
Barbecue. Gotcha. One of my favorites.
So, okay, well, we're going to get back to it, buddy. I'll talk to you later on this afternoon.
Sounds like a plan. Well, you guys stay safe out there and keep catching them up, Jeff. Appreciate the call this morning.
Okay, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Man, lots of stuff going on in the springtime. Oh, okay. Producer says we need to take a break. We got another caller that's trying to call in, so guess what? We're going to take our next break. I'm Captain Jim Ross. We'll be back with a whole lot more Catch Your Memory right after these messages, so don't go away. Welcome back. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch Your Memory Outdoors. We're just getting a big chuckle out of economics these days, you know. But, you know, we're not even going to worry about that right now. We'll talk about that later. Let's talk about what's going on up in the Mosquito Lagoon. We got Captain Mike Mann on the line. Good morning, buddy.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you today?
Doing great.
I am fishing the fourth season I've had this week today.
Exactly.
Maybe the fifth season. A couple of days I've had two seasons in one day, and it's just, I mean, what a bizarre weather week.
You know, I was talking about that before the break, Mike. Tuesday, they absolutely blew the forecast.
Yeah.
Blew it. That was one of the worst missed forecasts I've ever seen.
Did you get wet?
Oh yeah, and cold and windy and 20 out of the north and rain,
Yeah.
And then Wednesday, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
and it was slick calm most of the day.
Absolutely slick, calm, gorgeous.
Yeah, and then Thursday was beautiful, and then Friday they actually kind of got it right again.
You know, yesterday, and I've been out on the water every day with the exception of Monday and Tuesday because of the weather. Fortunately, it started raining, and I looked at the radar before I picked up my clients on Tuesday. But, you know, yesterday it started out, it was beautiful. It got warm. I came out of my jackets. About an hour and a half later, I'm putting my jacket back on. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Temperatures start dropping. I mean, it's just been bizarro, weird weather. You know, and today I show up, it's probably 53 degrees when I started this morning. It's still a little cool in the air. It's not 5 to 10. It's probably 10 to 12. I don't know. It may be an 8-mile-an-hour wind this morning, but it's cold.
Yeah.
It's definitely chilly. It's supposed to warm up in the 70s, then tomorrow the high is 65 again. So, if you don't like the weather, wait a few minutes. It'll change.
Well, I started off the morning in flip-flops, and then I decided I was going to change over to put some socks and shoes on. But I did not abandon my shorts today.
No, I am not in shorts. I am in fleece-lined pants today.
Well, I'm indoors and you're outdoors. There's the difference.
Yeah, you were indoors and I am outdoors. I'd rather sweat than be cold. I can't stand being cold. I've lost all the Georgia in me, and now I'm a Floridian, and I can't stand being cold. But, we're not tearing it up this morning, but we've got a couple of nice trout. We've got a couple of short trout. We're kind of just working down little shoreline, see if we can get a couple more decent trout to put in the box. And then we're going to switch over and maybe go fish some schools.
Now, I've got a question for you on that, Mike. Have you cleaned any trout lately?
I have not, no.
Okay,
you may black drum, but
you may be in for a big surprise when you lay.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
you may be in for a huge surprise. I don't like to clean fish out of the lagoon. I tell people you really don't want to eat fish that comes out of this water based on, some of the chemicals that are in the fish and in the water. And even though we've got better water quality than what we used to have, these are like lifetime chemicals that the Space Center and Patrick Air Force Base has dumped into the ground, and it's now throughout the ecosystem. And it's a lot of those. One of them is a flame retardant, like they use in firefighting foam. Okay, well, I don't remember what the actual product is, but apparently it's highly cancerous. And so we tell people you really don't want to eat anything out of here. It's really not all that good for you. But some people do want to keep stuff, so we're like, okay, so we keep it. Well, I cleaned a black drum and a couple of trout for a fella the other day, and I'm telling you right now, I cut into that trout, and I couldn't tell the difference between flesh and worms.
Oh yeah, I've heard that as well.
It looked like a worm farm. It was ridiculous. I was like, what is going on with the trout? I mean, sometimes trout have worms, sometimes they don't. Both of the trout I cleaned, it looked like a kid's, Sour Patch worm packet. I mean, it was worms and worms and more worms. And now here's what's interesting. The black drum I cleaned was one of those nice upper slot ones, right around 8 pounds. Yeah. Didn't see a worm in it.
Yeah, they've been beautiful and just really clean.
Yeah.
And I was telling the guys here, the problem I'm having is getting them small enough.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I think the one black drum we got yesterday was like 31 inches. I mean, I'm catching some monster black drum.
Yep.
And, I've got a couple of schools that, have been hit or miss that have some nice, 16-inch to like 24-inch, which is my favorite size. I like those 20 inchers. That's, if you're going to eat something, that's a good size to eat. But it's been funky, and there's been some really big reds I've pulled, still pulling some big reds out of the schools of black drum. And then I've got a few schools of redfish that have been really fairly cooperative. If you get the right conditions and you can see them, with enough clean water or clean skies and light winds, you can definitely find them. But you got to be stealthy. They've been kind of jacked up.
Now, Mike, I was talking in the beginning segment of the show. Unfortunately, my co-host for the day woke up and wasn't feeling well, so I'm flying solo in here this morning.
Oh,
but
man.
the fella, and so in the beginning segments of the show, I was talking about how good the black drum fishery has been so far for us this year. And I look through my photo album, and the majority of our catches are black drum. But we're catching black drum from 2 and 3 pounds along the shorelines up to about 12 or 14 pounds. And then the fish in the middle of the lagoon right now are running 15 to 25. And those big fish that we had last month that were spawning are in that 30 to 50 pound range.
Yeah.
They've gone. They've moved on. They've gone somewhere. And we haven't found those fish in a couple of weeks. I'm presuming that they're on their march northward to end up in the Pamlico and the Chesapeake and the various other places that those bigger drum eventually summer in. But what's interesting is we had a great spawn this year. And so with that, I'm expecting next year, the year after that, and the year after that to be fabulous drum fishing based on the amount of when you see schools of 2,000 drums spawning, that's a lot of potential babies that they're making. Are you seeing that same thing happen on the Mosquito Lagoon side where the fish were spawning and now the smaller fish that are still here haven't spawned yet? Or maybe not, they may not spawn. I don't know. I look at some of those fish and I say to myself, okay, are they old enough to actually engage in the spawn or not? But the main spawn happened at the end of January, and now I'm expecting as we come into this next full moon, we'll get one more spawn out of these residual fish that are still here. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a lot of. Sorry, I got a crabber coming up next to me wanting to talk to me. I'm definitely seeing the spawning going on. I've had a lot of the bigger ones, over the last 2 full moons. that were, daisy chaining up on top,
Yes.
and you could hardly get them to eat. I'm on a radio show. Hang on. These guys may be interested. We are, sorry, I got a crab guy offering some crabs up to us.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but over the last 2 months, I've been seeing a lot of spawners, up daisy chaining as we get closer to the full moon. And then I kept thinking, okay, well, it's going to end. Nope, they're still doing it. And the ones I got in yesterday were definitely doing that. They were moving up, and you would see them get up on top daisy chaining and, just wouldn't touch anything. And now I think they're going to, once we get past this next moon, they're going to settle down a little bit, and they're going to start eating good again. Man, we are in a mess of trouble.
Getting some good bites right now?
Yeah, I'm in a mess of trout right now. We are just getting. No, you're fine, brother. Sorry. Oh, we got a good trout on now. Sorry guys, trying to multitask as much as I can. But yeah, seeing those guys, and I mean, the size black drum I've been seeing this year are a lot bigger than I'm used to seeing in here.
Yeah, they have definitely grown. They have definitely grown over the last couple of years.
Yeah, because, it used to be we would get some of those, you would see the big breeding size, but not a ton of them. Now they are everywhere. And, it used to be just that random black drum that you would pick up that was, say, 30-inch plus. And now they are, I'm finding a lot of the bigger black drum, the guys that are running, 30-plus inches. I'm finding big schools of them.
Yeah.
And I used to not see that in here. Used to just see a random one that would be 20, 30 pounds. You found the big ones on the beaches. But now they're up in here. And I was telling these guys, these black drum in here, I don't think they ever leave here. I think they're just like the redfish. They reach maturity. They spawn in here. They spend their whole lives down here in the Mosquito Lagoon section I'm in.
Yep. Yeah, those fish up to about 25-ish pounds have been staying here year round, and it seems like when they hit around that 30-pound mark, that's when they start to transition up and down the coast with the rest of the big fish.
Yeah, and seeing those size in here now is it's a lot of fun. I had a young man yesterday. It was his birthday. It was his 11th birthday, and I think it was a 15, 16-pound black drum we had for him to. So that was a pretty nice birthday gift. Well, Jimmy, do you remember back in, say, early 2000s when we first started getting into this? Do you remember catching black drum?
Not much.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I caught
But I have to quantify that with we really weren't looking for them.
Yeah.
Every once in a while you would come across them, but we really weren't looking for them at that time.
Yeah.
But having said that, I think a lot of the reason that we're seeing as many black drum as we are, I think there's two reasons. I think one, there's been less grass for the last decade than what there historically was before that. And the second thing is we're looking at a clam restoration project that is one of the biggest success stories for this lagoon system that I have ever seen. Absolutely. Yep. There is no question that what Blair has started and CCA is doing in conjunction with Whitney Labs to put clams back in this lagoon system, there is absolutely no question in my mind that it is creating food sources for those drum and other fish. I'm seeing more whiting in the lagoon system. They eat clams. I'm seeing more croakers, mature croakers in the lagoon system. They eat baby clams, the ones that are the size of a pea or smaller. The ducks, every single bluebill you shoot is full of clams, every one of them. And so when you start looking at the black drum, the ducks, and the other couple of species that we're seeing more and more and more of, that's just because there's an actual food source for them. And with the black drum, they can find them easier because there's not as much grass for them to have to dig through. I mean, think about it this way. if you're going through if you're going to have to get yourself a piece of meat, okay, do you want to chop through a bunch of briars and kudzu and palmetto bushes to go try and shoot an animal and then clean it and then cook it? Or is it is it easier to just go to the Publix and pick it up and it's already got a vacuum, a saran wrap around it? It's a whole lot easier to just go to Publix than it is. Now, when you look at the black drum, do they want to fight their way through grass and all of this other stuff to try and get a clam? Or if it's just laying out there in open sand, which is the majority of the lagoon still, even though we've had some good grass regrowth, the majority of the lagoon system, the Banana and Indian in particular, is still sandy bottom or soft muddy bottom that the clams can live in. And it's very, very easy for those black drum to be able to feed on those clams in those conditions because they're not having to fight their way through that jungle of grass to try and find them.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm curious to see this summer because we've got really still very clean water. I have noticed, though, when we start getting some of those warm days, it's clouding up fast, and I don't like that.
Yeah. The water right now, I'll tell you, the water from Port St. John to the NASA Causeway is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
You're riding along in 5-6 feet of water, and you can see the bottom, and in the Indian River. Now, when you get to Titusville and go north, whole different story. I don't know what's going on up there, but it looks like beach renourishment water. It's sandy and silty looking from the railroad bridge north all the way up through the upper end of the lagoon. It's got this tan, sandy look to it.
Yeah, and I don't know what's causing that. That's a weird color change for up there. I noticed that last time I was over there. Down here, I mean, it's still, or up here where I am in the north end of the Mosquito Lagoon, it's still really clean, beautiful water. But you do notice that, once that water starts hitting that 70-degree mark, it's starting to get some areas where it's a little bit more just cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I've noticed that, fortunately we've had, I had a week ago where I had 76-degree water temperature. Now it dropped back down into the mid-60s, and it's cleaning back up in a lot of places. I'm curious to see because I'm starting to see some little grass sprigs already starting to show up. So I think this summer will be a true tale of how well the grass is coming back. It's going to be years before it's ever anything like what it was, but the more we get every year, I think the better off things are going to get and the better the fishery is going to be. This has been a really good 6 months, even a year. The last year's been a really good fishery.
I agree. And the more fresh water we can keep out of the lagoon, the longer we stay in a drought scenario here on the Space Coast, the better for our lagoon system, because nothing wrecks a good saltwater lagoon like storm water that gets piped down into it that we've, unfortunately seen too much of in years past.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, hopefully, we had Milton and we had Helene that dumped a lot, but it wasn't the amount that we had, say, 2 years ago with Ian. And then we had, pretty nice 2 years. I told these guys that they could hook fish while we're on the air, but we'll keep hooking the little guys. We need the big fish.
Well, there's nothing wrong with catching on every cast, though. That's for sure.
No. I think since we've been on air, we probably caught 5 fish and a crabber. I'm like, okay, how much multitasking can I do? And I felt like an octopus for a minute.
I hear you, brother. But we're going to let you get back to it. We're up against our 7:45 break. How does somebody get a hold of Captain Mike Mann?
Yeah, I've got a few days left open in March, and I've got actually a decent amount of days available in April. You can give me a call at area code 386-295-5991. You can go right to my website, fatfishguide.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Captain Mike Mann on Facebook, and on Instagram, CAPT Mike Mann with 2 N's. Hey, guys, tarpon season's right around the corner. Get your trip booked.
That's a good one. That's a good one to be ready for. That's for sure. Mike, thanks so much for the time this morning, the report on the Mosquito Lagoon, and hopefully your guys will continue catching fish throughout the day.
Thanks, guys. Get out there and catch a memory.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. Hey, gang, I'm Jim Ross. We're going to be right back with a whole lot more Catch a Memory after these messages, so don't go away. This segment of the show is brought to you by Engel Coolers, and if you haven't checked them out, man, you've got to check them out. Their coolers are absolutely just some of the finest in the industry. I love my Ingles. My ones that I keep on the boat just keep ice for days. My customers can put all their stuff in it. I've got all my stuff in it for a full day on the water. We got plenty of room left over with plenty of ice to keep everything good and cold. And if you just need a little carry around one, you've got your choice of soft sided, you've got your choice of hard sided. There's a couple little just handy little things that they make with their cooler dry boxes and their soft sided coolers that are just great for just throwing in the truck and running to the beach or running to the kids' soccer game or baseball game, softball game, whatever it happens to be. So check them out at engelcoolers.com, and you guys and gals are going to be impressed. You know, gang, we've obviously there's been a lot of black drum talk this morning. That's been the main species of the lagoons this spring. We've really had some great black drum fishing, and it's interesting. You know, those fish don't run like snook. They don't jump like tarpon, but they are like trying to pull a tractor in. And if you've ever tried to pull in a drum on 10 pound, 12 pound test line and a medium spinning rod, that's a double digit drum. You know exactly what I'm talking about. These things just plain fight. In fact, some of them this week, we couldn't even stop them. We'd get them out away from the mangroves, get them almost to the boat. They'd turn around and just bulldog their way all the way right back in and break you off under the mangrove roots. So kind of uncharacteristic for drum to do that. But I tell you, this week has been one of those weeks where we saw lots and lots of activity on the drum and didn't land everyone that we caught. That's for sure. The other thing is, we were talking before we got the call from Captain Mike Mann from Mosquito Lagoon. We were talking about things that have shown up this week. And one of the things for me that has shown up in huge numbers is baby tarpon, juvenile tarpon up to about 18 pounds, let's say 50 inches, 48 to 50 inches. Those fish have shown up in good numbers in most of the canal systems in Satellite Beach, Cocoa Beach, Merritt Island, the Ogallie River, Crane Creek. They have shown up because the water temperature now is pushing 70 degrees in the Intracoastal Waterway in basically all three lagoons. And what's interesting, though, is that we have not been able to get any of them to bite. And so, I've had a lot of people call me and say, hey, I've trying to catch these tarpon and I can't get these tarpon to bite. And I said, well, don't feel like the Lone Ranger, because I haven't been able to get them to bite either. The only thing that I've seen them biting or chewing on is these little tiny half-inch long minnows that you see hanging around the base of the mangrove trees. And whatever little type of minnow they are, they're slashing at them and gulping these things in mass, in good numbers. But there's going to be any day where they decide, okay, the water's warm enough, I can now eat a larger meal. And so Thursday afternoon, I actually saw this occur. We had sun all morning. We had no wind. The water temperature got up almost to 72 degrees. And I started seeing along one piece of shoreline tarpon actually chasing mullet. Now, the mullet they're chasing are in that 7 to 8 inch range. They're not huge mullet. They're not full-size mullet, but they're not fingerling mullet. There's in between. They're teenagers, if you will. And that got me really excited, because that is an indication that the water's warm enough that they feel like that they can eat a bigger meal and be able to digest that bigger meal with their metabolism rate and not have to regurgitate that. Like we had talked about a couple of weeks ago, we were seeing that the trout in those really, really cold time periods, we got those 2 weeks of cold, and the first couple of days after it settled down and we could actually get back out and it wasn't, in the 40s, we were actually seeing baby silver trout, or I shouldn't say babies, baby silver perch and baby croakers, that the trout were actually spitting up, and you could see them floating in some of the canal systems. So we were catching trout on jigs, on paddle-tail jigs, but we were also seeing them that they had already regurgitated them, or if you hooked one, they were regurgitating what was in their stomach, and half the time it was these 3 to 4 inch silver perch, which there's huge schools of these little silver perch all throughout the residential canals of Merritt Island, Cocoa Beach, Satellite Beach, like I was mentioning. And these trout are trying to feed on something, but the water was too cold for them to actually be able to digest those things at that time. And so they would start to digest them. They would start to rot, spoil, do whatever. And you would see just complete zones or areas where the trout had all regurgitated what they had eaten because they didn't have a high enough metabolic rate to be able to actually get them digested. And so they went back to feeding on those little teeny glass minnows like the tarpon are feeding on. But this Thursday afternoon was the first day, going back to that, the first day that I've seen mullet showering away from these tarpon that are in mainly the bigger ones in that 8 or 9 pound to about 15 or 18 pound range. Those fish are actually targeting those mullet at this time. I think after this we're going to get another front here tomorrow. After it warms back up, I think you're going to start to see a whole lot better action on the tarpon using those larger mullet. And so that's one of the things that, in my mind, that's my game plan, is that in the next couple of weeks, tarpon season for the juveniles is going to start. Now, we don't have the big ones yet, but the juveniles are going to start. And that's one of the things that really tells me that spring is sprung, if you will, in that it's time to go tarpon fishing. And we've got great places to tarpon fish throughout the lagoon. I mean, all of those canal systems I just mentioned throughout those areas. But if you look at Crane Creek, Turkey Creek, and Sebastian River in particular, those 3 places are places that juvenile tarpon congregate in the spring. And then right after the juveniles start to turn on, all of a sudden now you start getting this second wave of tarpon in April-ish time frame, early May, where you start getting tarpon into, the 50, 60, 80 pound class. And so, just letting you guys and gals know on your next few trips out, just be ready, because that phenomenon could happen at almost any time where those tarpon decide that yes, we are going to feed. I had one of my real good customers out the other day, Jim Glass. He's an avid fly fisherman, and we tried, 4 or 5 different flies to try to get those tarpon to feed. We just couldn't quite. We got them to follow once or twice on these little tiny, glass minnow patterns. Even with a 3-inch assassin, got them to follow it a little bit, but not quite commit to it. And so I think it's a matter of timing and bait presentation and bait size that's going to make the difference as to whether or not we're going to start catching these fish. But a couple of more degrees of water temperature in the lagoon system is definitely going to help that. When we start hitting 72, 73 degrees, those baby tarpon and the snook as well get very happy. And so being in the upper 60s, they're still very tentative. They're still very non-committal to things that you throw at them. I mean, we've thrown at 100 tarpon this week, thrown shrimp at 100 tarpon this week, and had absolutely no positive responses whatsoever from any of them. On a jig head, free lined. I even just took a handful of small shrimp, those little, undersized ones that they always seem to creep into your dozen you buy, and taken those and just thrown them up against these mangrove shorelines and let them free swim around in there, trying to chum the tarpon into a bite or into a frenzy. And I still have not been able to accomplish that. So, like I say, I think it's only a matter of time before the tarpon start, but they are here. And now that they are here, obviously we have opportunities to try and get them to bite. We just have to figure out when, how, where that's going to happen. And so those are the secrets that you got to unlock to be able to make these catches happen. I was going back to the Facebook feed here real quick. Want to say good morning to Danny Beard, who's on with us. Shelly Robinson's on with us. Who else have we got here? Teresa Beam listening in from Oklahoma. Chris Kaminsky from Vero Beach. Good morning to you all. John Martin's on there. Orson Tarver's on with us. Liz Barker, James Thier tuning in. Wanted to say a big shout out to a fella that is a good follower of the show. and I just recently actually got to meet him in person the other day while he was working and I was semi working. I was refilling boats, but it was nice to see him. And that's Shay Hobby. Shay's been a big follower of the show for a while now. Finally got to meet him in person the other day, and it was nice to see one of the listeners out there in the real world rather than just seeing you guys show up on the Facebook feed. So thank you so much for you guys and gals that have tuned in this morning. If you got any questions, obviously you can call us, or you can pop up on the Facebook feed here and try and ask a question. But we appreciate all of the participation that you guys do with us here at Catch a Memory Outdoors. I'm going to take the last minute of the show. Well, we're at the 8 o'clock hour now, and say we're going to be right back with a whole nother hour of Catch a Memory, and we might have somebody slipping in here to sit in with me here in just a couple of minutes. So don't go away. We've got a whole nother hour of Catch a Memory coming up with myself, Jim Ross, and possibly a super special guest here in just a few minutes. So don't go away. Welcome back. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. For those of you that are out there on Facebook, you can see we've got a special guest that just popped in here with us. Captain Kyle Weaver's in the studio. Kyle, I love that you're here. I hate the fact that you're here, though. I mean, you should be fishing right now.
Should be, but weatherman got it right.
Yeah, Kyle called me a little bit ago when we were on the 7:45 break, and he's like, "Hey, we didn't go. It blew." And you were supposed to go looking for tunas way offshore today.
Yeah, we're gonna go look for the tunas, and then northwest white capping in the river right there, and we're like, yeah, I don't cross that stream on a north wind.
Not on a north wind. No,
Too many good days.
And what size boat were you trying to get out
39 yellowfin. We're gonna take across, which was capable, but
why get beat up?
Exactly, a north wind, that Gulf Stream, and if your radar's not working, can't find the birds, it's a gamble, and it's early in the season.
Well, and then you got to think, you're trying to find the birds with your radar, and if it's white capping all the time, it's difficult to distinguish between the white caps and the birds sometimes.
Correct, and this time of year there are no birds. It's early.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's early in the season. Those birds are still nesting.
Okay.
So you don't get the big bird packs like you will like in another month. So you're targeting like single birds.
It's interesting that all of the birds are nesting right now. I've actually seen like either red-tailed or red-shouldered or Cooper's hawks. I can't. It's hard to tell the difference in them. An expert could, but I can't. I have seen them mating and nesting, which is kind of weird. To watch them mate is like, wow, that was kind of neat. I have seen bald eagles building nests. In fact, there was one flying over the Haulover Canal the other day with 2 talons full of like Spanish moss to take back to its nest. I've seen some other, I don't even know what kind it is, but it's a little merlin or some kind of little teeny, falcon or something that had grabbed some twigs and was flying with some twigs in his town. And I'm like, normally when you see a bird of prey, he's got something in his, he's got, whether it's a mouse, a rabbit, a baby bird. If it's an osprey, it's a fish, or sometimes when it's an eagle, it's a fish. It's kind of odd when you see him flying around with building materials in their talons. So yeah, everything is nesting right now. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's Easter. Where do you think the eggs come from?
Right. the gold ovals. The golden ovals for sure. Well, so you were gonna sneak out there. Has anybody really been going?
The guy's been hitting everybody hits the buoy. It's
right.
A structure, but there's starting to get some trickling reports. It's still early.
Mm-hmm.
It's hit or miss this time of year, but
when is your favorite time of the year to get out there?
Anytime. It seems like it's changing over the years. I'm not home a lot like I used to be.
Right.
But springtime definitely is your best tunas. But it used to be back when I ran charter boats out of here before I started traveling, we'd catch them all the way through hurricane season.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the hurricanes came, that stirred up out there, and then they'd disperse and we'd stop catching. But now it seems like I'd say by the end of May it's over. Or we used to run tuna trips every single day in the summertime.
Yeah,
and
June
find
and
'em.
July.
Yeah,
you're running across all the time.
and now it seems like I would say sometime in May it starts trickling off. When that water temp hits at 80ish, it seems like those tunas are gone now.
Yeah.
But they're here, and the bigger ones are here this time of year, and they're really aggressive because they haven't been harassed. But they're harder to find because you don't have the birds to find them. You don't have the big bird packs.
Gotcha.
So you really got to concentrate on that structure.
I was
or
going to say,
that
you're probably looking at structures, temperature breaks, those sorts of things.
altimetry,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards. You're trying to find that edge. And this time of year, too, you could find that edge on the other side, and it's going to be loaded up with dolphin wahoos. Your billfish will be on it. If you get a few days of an east wind, you'll start getting those good edges on the other side of the Gulf Stream on this side.
It's interesting. The guys to the north out of Ponce, I haven't heard a whole lot of noise coming out of there. The Canaveral guys, there's very few guys that actually truly fish. They go to the reef and turn circles, and that's kind of the Canaveral. That's kind of the Canaveral charter mentality. Is we're just going to go catch kingfish, bottom drop a couple spots. There's not a lot of trolling activity out of the charter fleet from Canaveral. Now, the private fleet's a little different. The private fleet out of there obviously knows that there are fish to catch, but the charter fleet is maximizing their income and minimizing their outlay by simply going to the reef, getting a couple of king mackerel, dropping to the bottom, letting them pull on a couple of ARSs or sandbars, which the ARSs seem to automatically turn into halfway up the water column. They start turning into sandbar sharks or bull sharks, and then they come back to the dock and they hang their catch. And there's very little activity when it comes to trolling activity. The guys out of Sebastian and the guys out of Fort Pierce are a totally different breed. Those guys are more big game trollers than the Canaveral crowd. Yeah. And I'm not trying to generalize, because there are some good guys that troll out of Canaveral, but there's overall the charter fleet is not designed and set up to be a dolphin wahoo style trolling fleet.
And it used to be in Canaveral.
It used to be huge.
You've seen that
when
change.
Eddie Roberts had the Sea Venture and
Ticket, and
Eddie was running the Ticket, the Good Vibrations, all of those boats.
Jester and the Joker.
Yeah. Those boats were all designed as big game boats.
And you got to look at your clientele probably in the charter. I mean, I don't follow the charters anymore because I'm private, but their clientele is probably from the Midwest, and catching a kingfish or that kind of stuff is the greatest thing in the world for them.
Well, what Canaveral's charter fleet has turned into is Disney overflow.
Correct. And
it's you're not coming here as a fishing destination like you were 20 and 30 years ago. The charter Canaveral fleet, or the Canaveral charter fleet, is a lot of mom and dad and uncle and aunt and granddad and grandma. It's a lot of Disney's theme park overflow, and so by tailoring to that clientele, they're doing very well. It fits perfect for them. But we don't get the guys out there high speeding for wahoo. We don't get the guys out there pulling, a 7-line spread with 2 teasers for the dolphins. We just don't get that.
And when I charter fish, when I was running the charter boat, I would say 75% of our clientele is return clientele.
Yeah.
Most of them from Orlando or whatever, and they want to do the trolling and stuff like that. But cost of fuel now, obviously fishing's probably not near as good as it was back when I was trolling. I never remember a day in the summertime where if I didn't have a charter night, let's just say we went out my 20-foot Mako, you started trolling 90 feet of water, you caught your limit of kingfish, and you just kept going out, and then you'd stop and bottom fish and troll in. And you'd always catch sailfish, a wahoo, a dolphin. That was all summer long.
Yeah.
And now that dolphin run, even in the Bahamas, it used to be like a month of dolphin run, and they'd wear you out. Now it's like a 1 to 2 week dolphin run. And, these fish are going through. So Sebastian and Fort Pierce, those guys are getting the local clientele because of return customers probably. Mm-hmm. Whereas up here, I think, like you said, we're getting that cruise ship mentality overflow.
Sebastian and Fort Pierce, St. Lucie, those are not family vacation destinations. Those are
going to fish.
I'm going to go fish.
Yeah.
And so those guys have a different clientele, and so they can continue to target this. I mean, as an example, this time of the year is typically incredible for wahoo.
It used to, God, from October, anytime you could get out from October until April, and you could get on the cones or get on the edge of the Gulf Stream. I can't tell you how many 8, 10, 15 wahoo fish days we had trolling and sailfish, in the blackfin tunas.
I mean, 8 wahoo in one day in today's world would be an epic day
and
of
that
wahoo
was
fishing.
not uncommon back then in the wintertime. If you could get out in the wintertime, you would. You're going to get the wahoos, and where there's wahoos or sailfish, those two go hand in hand. And then you'd get the blackfin, in between.
As the bycatch in many cases.
Yeah, and blackfin to us back then was just blackfin. Kind of like cobia. Cobia we did it just because now it's everybody wants to do it.
Now it's all the rage.
Yeah. It changes. And you look at that Stewart to Palm Beach, right in there around Jupiter to Stewart is the cutoff between the kite fishing and then the trollers, and the reason kite fishing is so good down there is because it's such a narrow gap that they can put the kites up. My kite over here with the weight on it going out here is an 120. This kite's over 90 feet of water, so I'm covering from 90 to 120. Yeah. Well, that's 4 or 5 miles out of Canaveral.
At least.
So
at least.
That's why that trolling from Stewart north, there's a cutoff.
You have to cover ground.
Correct.
And down where, like you say, where the bottom contours are compressed, and you get that roll down from 90 down to 120, and then that next roll down from 180 down into the 250 range. Those two roll downs are very easy to cover down there. Up here, it's miles and miles apart from one another, so you can't really put kites out and fish effectively with a kite up here most of the time.
You could if you found that concentration.
Or that
structure,
that edge,
or structure. Yeah. But I think you'd upset a lot of people. You start flying kites up here. I'm not against it. I would do it, but I think the locals just aren't ready for it yet.
So here's what we need to do. We need to figure out how we go about setting up kite fishing trips for red snapper.
You could easily do it.
Easily do it.
Be fun. Topwater action.
Yeah. Watch them come up and smack on the top.
That would be fun. Even the kingfish.
Yeah, definitely.
The bite on the kingfish bite. When we're sailfish, those 20 feet in the air, kingfish airing out on your kite baits all the time.
Yeah.
$10 goggle eye. There it goes. $10 goggle eye.
Yeah, exactly. $10 goggle eye. Exactly. Well, guys and gals, we're going to take our first break of the second hour. When we come back, we got more with Captain Kyle and myself, Jim Ross, so don't go away. Welcome back. This segment of the show is brought to you by the guys and gals over at Petrucci Insurance. And if you're like me, you hate having to pay that insurance bill every year. But you got to pay for your house insurance, your car insurance, your boat insurance, and any other insurance that you got to pay for. So make sure that you're getting the best possible deal. Call Petrucci and have them do a rate quote for you. And if they run a rate quote, you're probably going to find out that you can save somewhere, somehow, in some way, and have a better policy overall without wasting any money. That's what they do. So give them a call, 321-632-1200. That's 632-1200. And if you've been dropped from your insurance, which I know a lot of people in the past year have gotten non-renewal notices, obviously Petrucci's here to help. So give them a shout, 321-632-1200. Kyle, we were talking about wahoo, and that's one of the species that a lot of people really don't have a good handle on. There's wahoo caught occasionally as bycatch, but most of the time, people aren't specifically targeting them. And people that are specifically targeting them have very, very definite ways that they set their gear up. Types of lures that they're using, types of rods and reels that they're using, speeds at which they're trolling at. Let's talk just a little bit about that. And then let's talk about that, and then I've got a secondary question to go along with wahoo, because right now, if you're going to catch wahoo, right now is really the time to be doing it.
Yeah, at water temp. I love that 67 to 76. 67 is a little on the cold side, but anywhere from that 72, 76, when I see that water temp, that's when I'm extremely
Which is
happy.
what it is at the weather buoy this morning. Yeah, 72 degrees.
Perfect timing. Where you generally with the sailfish season, colder, for instance, was it last weekend? 2 weekends ago, I was down in Went to Bimini, did a Wahoo trip down there, ran 120 miles to a couple banks that I know about that. But you have to go to the Bahamas to clear. And we had 20 that day and then 5 the next day, and it just shut down. They're very moody fish. They're very tide change, just like snook in the inlet.
So you ran to the Bahamas, and what boat were you in that?
I took a 37 Freeman on that trip.
Okay. That's one of your boss's boats, or that's just a
Just
friend?
it was a friend's boat.
Friend's boat. Okay. So you run the boat over, you clear customs in the Bahamas, and then you run south?
Yeah, from Bimini, we ran south. We were pretty close to Cuba.
Okay. So you're down in no man's land, Pirateville, if you will. Literally.
A lot of Coast Guard boats flying around over there right now. Saw plenty of Coast Guard.
And you're specifically targeting Wahoo. Now, you caught 20 Wahoo on the first day?
Correct.
And 5 on the second day.
Yeah,
And then how many on the third day?
third day we couldn't get a bite. And
None.
No. And
So you go from hero to 0 in 48 hours. Isn't that's just amazing to me?
Well, the thing what was weird about it is like the next day I really got on the fish. I went to a different area and we marked so many more fish, and we caught boom, 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 and I left those schools of fish. And I just wanted to get back to that area on the tide change. So I was mapping out where those schools were at. I'm like, okay, I got a school here with 50 fish, school here 20 fish, and I had
And you're
them.
marking them with your sound.
Yeah, and I was marking them out. Confirm, catch one. All right, let's give them time on that tide change. They're going to chew. And all of a sudden, from 12:30 on, and the tide was at 1:30. We caught all the fish the day before from like 12:30 to 2 on the tide.
Mm-hmm.
So 52 minutes later, all right, we're on it. I know where they're going to be, and we couldn't get another bite. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What's going on? And then we tried. I'm like, Wahoo aren't. I tried everything. They wouldn't eat. Deep dropping, nothing. All right, let's go inshore and let's slow pitch. Try and get some strawberry groupers, muttons, or whatever. Nothing. I get in that night and I find out there's an 8.0 earthquake.
An 8.0 earthquake?
Off Cuba. And I'm wondering, because in Hawaii, every time we had earthquakes, it would shut it down for 3 or 4 days. And in the Azores, where I'm at, an earthquake happens, it shuts the bite down. Did that cause everything to not feed? I mean, they were marking and really, really good, but,
But no bite.
couldn't get a bite. But go back to it, every day is different. So all our fish came on one lure. And then we put two more of that same color out, or very close to that color scheme. Couldn't get a bite, but they all were coming on that one lure. And then we were getting triples, and then, they'd eat everything, but all our singles, every time that one lure would go off first. And then you go buy 4 of those lures, and the next trip, and they're going to be on a different pattern.
They're going to eat something.
That's why you got to you got to find out what they want to eat, and then start adjusting to what they want to eat.
Yeah.
If there's flying fish, obviously blue and white sometimes goes off. Wahoos, they can be very finicky on what they want to eat. And then just like anything else on the days of fronts, like today would probably be a real good day. They will gorge themselves and you don't miss a one. And then all of a sudden you fish the next day in a tournament and it's like doing everything the same. It's like, zzz, zzz, and you're missing them. You keep missing them.
They're nipping at it.
They're nipping at it. It's like, so blue marlin do it, tunas do it, everything does it. You see inshore fishing, the trout one day or the redfish,
So when you were set up, okay, so you're specifically doing this Wahoo trip. When you're set up, what is your rod that you're using, your reel is it a...
So we were high speeding.
Okay. So you're pulling anywhere from 10 knots to 15 knots?
I was doing 18 to 20 because it was calm that day.
Okay.
So
speed, really fast speed.
You can't go fast enough, as long as the lures are in the water. So high speeding, the advantage, especially like say the Bahamas, the advantage to high speeding is you can cover a lot of ground.
Uh-huh.
And by, you're going down an edge. So I'm going from X depth to X depth and I'm zigzagging. Well, I'm covering a lot of ground really quick. And then you're finding the schools and you come back to them. So the advantage to high speed, and plus you're not catching the barracudas and the kingfish and the other fish.
Gotcha.
They usually...
You're just solely targeting the Wahoo.
Correct. And you'll occasionally get a bycatch or whatever. When you go slower, you start catching, you'll go, say I was ballyhoo fishing. I go through 8 dozen ballyhoos and barracudas to catch 2 wahoos. So high speeding has its advantages. The cover ground.
Right.
And you can do it out of here. But
now, is there a preferred depth that you like to fish for Wahoo?
Yeah, I love, well, for the Northeast, like say you're going to go out of Jacksonville up there, those fish seem to like to be a little bit shallower. They're in there eating the bonitas and the blackfins and mixed in, they're in anywhere from 90 to 180 feet of water. They love that.
Okay.
Canaveral, same thing. Like if I were to fish out of Canaveral, I would pick the 130 foot, 21 bottom, or I'd troll the 27, that structure, and then I'd go out to the cones.
So 21 fathom, 27 fathom.
Yeah, so like the
cone.
100, but
you're always trolling over structure when possible.
Or where the currents meet, but they are structure oriented. Like in the Bahamas, I love looking for points with a gradual, not a steep wall, and, in the Bahamas, depth's not so much because you get too shallow. You're talking 20 yards from 130 feet to 60 feet up on those reefs.
It's real sharp.
So, and for me to go 300 feet, you're only talking 100, from 150 feet to 300 or 600 feet of water could be a matter of 50 yards.
Yeah. It could be within the scope of your swerve
exactly
as you're trolling.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you just try and hug that edge. And then when the tide flushes, I've marked them as far as 900 feet off, depending on how good that tide is. But that's not that far off the edge over there. When
now,
the water's
everybody
flushing.
out there is going, okay, he said tide like 19 times now.
Tide is everything.
Do you like the change of the top of the tide or the change of the bottom of the tide?
Outgoing
tide.
I mean, you will catch them on the push in, but you got to think in the Bahamas and most islands, imagine a plate in a sink and you pick that plate of water up. All that water flows off that bank at the same time.
Okay.
It might be, if the plate's a little crooked, so it might be, excuse me, it could be 10 minutes different, 20 miles up the reef or 5 miles up the reef. It might be flowing out of this cut and then all of a sudden starting to flow out of this cut and then flowing out of that cut, just a little bit different. When I used to fish the tournaments, I could fish this side, run 100 miles over to the other side of the bank and catch it over there. But you got to have, it's just the tides, just like the inlets.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the 2 hours on either the high or the low, preferably the low is my favorite, or the start, flushing that bait. But you want wind pushing bait from the ocean. You get 4 days of a certain wind direction, and then you got that current hitting against that wind direction. You create a nice, beautiful edge.
So you get water falling off of the bank and the wind pushing onto the bank, and it's compressing everything into a smaller zone.
Correct. Just like, the inlets. You got an east wind coming out of Sebastian, and you got that current pushing right there, and all of a sudden you watch that tide line go out, and that's all your bait.
Yep. It's all right on the tide line. Got it. Okay. So that's, you're using what, 50s or 80s or
130s.
Oh, really? 130. Okay.
Well, the sharks. Sharks are obviously,
sharks are everywhere.
But you're also pulling a lot of, to troll that fast, you're pulling a lot of lead. You're going 90, 80, 64, 48, 32 ounce leads. So it's nice to be able to clear that if you got seaweed and stuff, and I don't have to keep slowing down.
Right.
But it's just really to get it away from the sharks. I mean.
So you're putting as much as a 90 ounce lead.
Correct.
On your flat lines because they're close to the boat.
Yep.
And a 32 ounce or 36 ounce lead on your long line.
Correct.
To keep the lure down in the water at 18 or 20 knots.
Right. And the bigger the lure, the more lead you're going to need.
Yeah.
So you smaller, out here, you could get away at 32, 24.
If you were going to tell a listener, okay, we have, you know what, let's take a break. And then we'll come back and we'll pose that question because that's going to take more than 30 seconds to figure out. So, guys and gals, we're going to talk about specific lures for high speeding with Captain Kyle Weaver and myself, Jim Ross, right after these messages, so don't go away. Welcome back. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. We're going to do the Starbright Cleaning Solutions segment of the show right after we let you know that this segment of the show was brought to you by Direct Graphics. So if you are looking for a fantastic way to promote your business, give Direct Graphics a call, 321-631-1001. They've got all of the solutions that you could possibly need to help make your business stand out, whether you need a boat wrap, a truck wrap, whether you need a billboard, whether you need banners, whether you need business cards. I mean, they do it all at Direct Graphics. So give them a call, 321-631-1001. Now, Starbright Cleaning Solutions segment. Obviously, you guys and gals may have noticed, if you haven't used your boat in 3 or 4 weeks, that yes, the pollinating did occur. It has happened, and everything is yellow and stained, and you get a couple of rain events coming in on top of that, and now you've got these black drip streaks all over the boat. So you got to get out there, clean it up, clean down in your hatches, and we talked about that reggae mitt last week and how effective it is at getting in those little hatch openings and those channels and drains around your hatches to get all the gunk and goop out of there. But once you get everything cleaned off, now it's time to get the deck wax out. And you get the non-skid deck wax from Starbright. This is one of the best products to help keep your boat clean, shiny, keep the fish blood, the poop, everything else from sticking to it whenever you get done getting it nice and shiny again. So check out the Starbright non-skid deck wax. It is absolutely one of the best products that you're going to be able to use on your boat. Kyle, we were talking about wahoo fishing, and not a lot of people do it. And I think it's because not a lot of people know how to do it. So when you get an expert like yourself who's done it for years and years and years in places all over the world, from right here in Port Canaveral to the Bahamas to the Azores to Hawaii to the South American, Central and South America area, when you get that, kind of knowledge base that you have, and be able to put that out on the airwaves for these listeners to pick up on that information and to be able to utilize that information, this is invaluable for them. So you're using 130s. You're pulling how many pounds of drag?
So at that speed with the spread I run, 35 pounds of drag on the reel, but that doesn't equate to what's actually the fish is taking. So it takes roughly 30 to 35 pounds of drag just to stop the line from creeping off the reel at that speed with that kind of weight. So when the fish eats, he's only really pulling 4 or 5 pounds of drag. Until you slow down, then he's feeling the full effect.
Right.
Because, resistance, right? And that's what I try to explain to people about marlin fishing. Big lures, they pull hard. So, yeah, you might have 8 pounds of drag on your reel at the dock, but what's it really coming off once that lure's attached? Anybody that's ever trolled, you get a little piece of seaweed on, you know how hard it is to pull
Just
that
to
piece
pull
of
some sargasso
in. So you got to equate that in there. So when I'm high speed, I want my drag set just enough to keep the line from creeping off. Now, you don't have to use 130. You could get and go fish your 50s. The reason we fish that heavy is we're dealing with
Well, in many places that you're fishing, Southern Bahamas
Sharks.
as an example, you've got sharks, but you're dealing with 80 to sometimes over 100-pound wahoo.
Correct. And they make giant runs, and you get a triple on you, now you're dealing with it. So out of here, I'd have no problem trolling 50s, And I wouldn't go any less than 60-pound line because you will break 60-pound test. If you're, let's just say the average boat, you don't need to do 60. Let's just say you're going to do 12 knots. You're at 50% of your breaking strength of the line right away with trolling lead.
Just pulling the lure and the
Correct.
leads. Yeah,
So
you got 30 pounds of drag just to keep the line from pulling off the reel
Yep.
at that speed.
I wouldn't go less than 60.
Okay.
For 12 knots and more. Now, 10 knots, the wahoos will always eat. So out of here, fish what you have. Just lighten it up. If you only have 30s, sure, you could do it, but you're not going to go 16 knots and keep the lures in the water. So do 9 knots, 10 knots, whatever you can, and just downsize your lead. So the way the standard high speed is, you're going to take a trolling lead, the cigar style trolling leads. I always have cable on mine because wahoos will eat that
They'll
lead.
try and eat the lead.
And they'll slide off, and then they're going to cut you off. And then you do a shot cord, which is your leader. I run 23 feet or 25 feet because I got to stay within IGFA for the tournaments.
Right.
So that makes it a total of 30 feet when I stretched
So
out.
your leader to your hook.
Yep. It's got to be 30 feet from the swivel to the back of the hook for IGFA, for tournaments.
So you're running, let's just say the average guy's got a 50-pound reel. He's got a pin 50 or whatever, lever drag. He's running 60-pound line on it, and he's tying that to a swivel that's to the trolling
cigar lead,
to the trolling sinker. It has cable coming out each side.
Mm-hmm.
from that back swivel to the lure. What pound test are you using there?
So I use cable in the Bahamas.
Cable the whole way.
The whole way.
Okay.
You can get away with mono. out of here, I'd probably, to get more bites, if you're going to high speed and you're going so fast, that stuff's kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's a reaction bite. But if you're doing like 8 knots, 10 knots, 12 knots, 150-pound mono,
Okay.
smaller swivel back there, just keep, and then you definitely want a minimum number 9 wire. I use number 18 wire, because you are going fast, and the bite.
So what you're saying is the faster you go, the heavier tackle you can use because the fish aren't getting a chance to look at it.
Correct, and the bite's a little bit more violent too. A bite at 10 knots opposed to a bite at 18 knots. You got a 60-pound fish hitting something at 20 miles an hour, and he's going 20 miles the other way. That's pretty violent. So things will break quick.
Yeah.
Slower you go, the more cushion you have. So if I do use mono in the Bahamas, I usually use like 250 to 300 for the shock cord.
Okay.
So
now going back to the lure itself. So we've got our gear. If you have bent butts obviously work better than straight butts. But not that you can't do it with a straight butt. It's one of those run what you brung kind of things until you get to the point where you're either comfortable enough with saying, okay, I need to spend more money and go get better quality gear for this particular endeavor, or you get to the point where you're like, no, I don't really feel like I'm getting my money's worth out of this, and I don't want to sink any more into it. Let me go back to trolling ballyhoo on a popperhead or something.
And high speed, and let's go back to that too. The good thing about high speed is you're covering ground. So let's just say you put them out and you're doing 12 knots or 14 knots and you're running around, and then all of a sudden you do find that weed line or that, wow, this looks really good. There's birds working, there's bait. You can slow it down, put the ballyhoos out and fish your normal way.
Fish the normal way.
But we're strictly targeting wahoos in the Bahamas when I go.
Yeah, and they're big wahoos.
Yeah.
I mean, how many wahoo do you catch over there that are 40 pounds or less?
It depends where you're at. So, like, when you go to, like, say, west end, the corner, they call it,
Matinella Shoal.
Those fish average 35, right in that area. They're 35. Bimini, they average 35.
Okay.
Then you start getting around different sides of the banks, southern Bahamas, then their average fish is 45 to 65 with 80s and 90s are common, depending on the bank.
Right.
But at a Canaveral, I mean, like right now, I would say the best wahoo fishing right now anywhere would be that North Florida. Those guys up in St. Augustine and Jacksonville, and they're catching. This year they outproduced the Bahamas. There was a 107-pound wahoo caught in Walker's yesterday, or the day before yesterday, and then there was another 100-pound fish, 111 caught in Hopetown, which is Boat Harbor, Bahamas.
Okay.
And then I know of a couple in southern Bahamas. Sansal, Crooked, Cat Island, not Cat so much, but Sansal, Crooked, Rum Cay, Diana Bank, Acklands. I'm going to catch a 100-pounder every season there. And there's multiple 100-pounders.
Gotcha.
Like, if somebody wants a 100-pounder, I take them down there and we fish the noon for 7 days. We're going to have a 100-pounder. We might get the head back, but I'm going to have a 100-pound shot at that fish. Right. Out of North Florida right now, they're catching tons of 80s and 75s and 100s. And they're doing the same.
So there's a good biomass of fish off of that
Huge,
St. Augustine, Jacksonville area right now.
Huge.
Based on water temp, bait. All
Shallow, too.
And it's shallower.
Yeah, but they're running further because they have to get there,
Yeah.
But those guys up there, they've got it perfected. They're high speeding until they find the bait, and then they're live baiting just like you would kingfish.
Okay.
They're sabiki and those bonitas or those tinker mackerels or whatever, or the hardtails, and then they're live baiting up there, and that's how they're catching those giant fish.
Gotcha.
And they have tuna tubes. It's kind of last 4 years it's taken off up there.
Yeah, the tuna tubes have really caught on with the wahoo guys here.
Because they're having to use those bonitas.
Yeah.
And, a wahoo's favorite food is a skipjack, blackfin, bonita. They love, that's their favorites. When you find those, you're going to find the wahoos. So
going back out of here, Sebastian, Ponce Inlet, Canaveral in the middle of those two, 50-pound line, 60-pound leader, trolling weights, 150-pound mono between the trolling weight and the lure itself. What's the lure? What's What is
Islanders. You can't go wrong with an
is there
Islander.
one style? Is there one brand? Is there one
If I were to all the years of fishing the Wahoo tournaments, if I had to pick one lure, I mean, I have lures that I've caught my giant ones on that are my tournament winners. But if anybody were to say, hey, I want to catch Wahoo, what am I going to pull? I'd say go buy you Islanders.
And if you're picking colors, obviously blue and white,
Black and purple.
black and purple,
Red and black.
red and black.
So
What about like all black?
All black and all the time. All black, all blue out of here used to be my favorite with the value in it, but you got to mix up colors because you don't know what they're going to be targeting. This last trip, all our fish came on one lure. And then a couple other lures would get bit afterwards, but out of the singles, if we just got singles, it was that same lure every time. The next day, it might be something totally different. They change all the time.
So let's go ahead and take our last break of the day. In the last segment of the show, let's talk about the ballyhoo trolling guy who's just out to get a couple of fish to put in the box, but wants to have a chance at actually putting that wahoo in the box as well. And so he's going to set one lure out there for that wahoo. Let's talk about that a little bit when we come back. Guys and gals, Captain Kyle Weaver has been gracious enough to join me this morning. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the talk. I'm Captain Jim Ross, and we're going to be back with the last segment of Catch a Memory right after these messages. Appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. The last segment of the show, and we appreciate you tuning into it, is sponsored by Strike Zone down in Melbourne. Remember all the stuff that we're talking about. You can find all this stuff down at Strike Zone, one of the few places around here that has good quality tackle for specific fish like wahoo that we've been talking about here in the last half hour. Want to do one thing real quick. Let's tell you about the fishing and boating conditions for today. They're supposed to be northwest at 5, switching to south at about 5 to 10 by the afternoon, and then becoming north at 10 to 15 by this evening as the front kind of starts to push through. But it sounds like it's a little bumpier than that right now. Captain Kyle says, yeah, it's not quite what they had forecast.
It wasn't out of Sebastian this morning,
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Well, we got 62 degrees and 2 feet at 6 seconds at the Ponce buoy, 68 degrees at the 4-mile buoy out of Canaveral, 1 foot at 8 seconds there. The 20-mile buoy is showing 72-degree water temp and 2 foot at 8 seconds. And the 6-mile buoy out of Fort Pierce, 72 also for the water temp and 2 feet at 8 seconds. So the western edge of the Gulf Stream is currently 41 nautical miles out of Ponce, 30 out of Canaveral, and 24 out of Sebastian. And the current surf temp out of Ponce is 62 degrees. Cocoa Beach is 68 degrees. Sebastian Inlet is 71 degrees. Man, those are all looking awfully cobia-ish, if you know what I'm saying. Tides look like this. Port Canaveral, 8:30 a.m. is the high. Low is 2:34 p.m. and the high again this evening at 8:55 p.m. And Sebastian is 8:39 a.m. for the low, 2:49 p.m. for the high, and 9:07 p.m. for the low. Best times to hunt and fish today, the Soul Lunar Tables, brought to you by the great guys and gals down at All About Archery. Remember, it's always archery season. Make sure that you're keeping your stuff tuned up properly. Take it down there to All About Archery and have them check your cam timing and various other things, strings, cables, all that. Make sure that you're tightened up and ready to go so that you don't lose any of your efficiency and your accuracy. But the major, 12:35 p.m. to 2:35 p.m. and the minor is at 7:56 p.m. to 8:56 p.m. So midday major and evening time minor. It's going to be a good day of fishing.
We just need Big Red to start poking through these clouds.
Yeah.
I know where I'll be.
Got to get some sunshine rolling in. So, Kyle, we were talking about high speeding, and not everybody's going to be able to do that. So for the guy who's just going out there, he's bought a couple of packs of ballyhoo. He's wanting to put a dolphin or two in the boat, maybe a blackfin tuna, maybe a king mackerel, and on the outside chance that he comes across a wahoo. What is that? What is that one line? Where are you placing that one line? What is that one line going to have on it for for a lure, if you will?
I would actually 2.
2 lines? Okay.
Yeah, so your normal.
Let's give them a 6-line spread then.
Even a 4, 5.
Okay.
Just do a 5-line. Let's not get too crazy. Let's just
Okay,
do 5.
5
Got 2 riggers, 2 flats, and
So the guy in an average 22 to 24 foot center console can make this happen.
he can make it happen even without outriggers.
Okay.
So On my flat line, which is your closest rod in the corner of the boat, not your outriggers, I would have either like a Yozuri Bonita, we call them Marauders, the swimming plug,
swimming
or
plug.
like a lip plug, like a Nomad or a Rapala. The Rapalas work real well. Any of those, that gets down deep. On the other side.
So what you're doing is you're putting that bait, that close bait. How far back is that bait? 50 feet? 30 feet?
It depends how deep you want it to run. Further you let it go, the deeper it's going to run.
Right.
Now, the Yozuri Bonita, not so much. It's going to pretty much stay like probably 5 feet below the surface at 8 knots. The lip plugs, further out, further it goes down, right?
But what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the bait fish out of the bubble trail of the motor, just beside it.
Most of my bites come in that bubble
Or
trail.
do you want it to
attracts
be in the bubble
It
trail?
can be in the bubble trail.
Okay.
A fish doesn't know bubble trail. To him, it's bait fish.
It's commotion.
Yeah. So my flat line, I'd like to have a swimming plug or a vibrating style plug, whether
Okay.
it's a Rapala or a Yozuri Bonita or something. And then my other Wahoo lure on my shotgun, I would probably put either a 24, 32-ounce trolling sinker on the shotgun, just like you would high speeding.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd have it as far back as you could get it without getting run over by another boat. And put your favorite color. Like
So 100 yards, 150 yards even?
yeah, if you want, sure.
Yeah.
The further
Not,
back,
not even talking feet at this point, talking yards.
the further back, the better.
Okay.
You can't go too far. You can't go too, And I would 24, 32-ounce trolling lead, probably a 24 for most people, or 16. And
Because you're trolling it safe.
8 knots, 7 knots.
I would say
yeah,
five
five
to
to
eight.
7. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would have an Islander on it, whether it's a red and black, blue and white. Pink and blue is a real good color. Your favorite color. There is no right color, just your favorite color. Whatever you catch fish on, put it. And I'd have that on a bow.
You go with a dark bait, dark day, light bait, light day scenario, or you just whatever you want to throw out there?
I try and match the hatch. If I see a lot of flyers, I'll put a blue and white out there.
Okay.
I've
You
caught
see baby bonitas, maybe something with some black.
yeah. I've caught a lot on black and purple. Black and purple and blue and white, pink and blue are your probably 3 best, most consistent
Okay.
Wahoo colors anywhere you go.
Gotcha.
Wahoo's like bright, goofy colors too. They love,
Like zucchini.
yeah, they love goofy colors sometimes.
Okay.
Orange, Halloween, greens. I mix it up all the time. Like I'll do black and purple with a glow in the dark skirt, but for ballyhoos, just mix it up.
Yep.
And then you put a couple naked ballyhoo. But if there's a lot of Wahoos around, you have to have wire. The guys in South Florida, this is a whole different show. The planer fishing, they're doing straight mono, and they're planer fishing early in the morning. But they have the cuts, so they have when that outgoing tide in the morning, the current's going out and it's stopping all that. It's trapped. So these guys in South Florida, 1.5 miles, 2 miles out, are planer fishing, and they're doing the same thing, but they're using strip bait, strip bonitas and stuff. And you use a super, super long J hook. And they're doing on light mono. And they do get clipped off. But Wahoo usually cut everything in half. So that long J hook will stop it from cutting. Out of here, I use number 7 or number 9 wire. And haywire twisted up, a peg rig. And there's plenty of things on YouTube. Google it.
Right.
Millions of things on YouTube on Wahoo fishing.
And leader length.
You don't have to go long. I prefer 4 to 5 foot.
So
But
5 foot's all you need.
the biggest problem I see people use is they use too big of a snap swivel.
Okay.
These guys are buying 150-pound snap swivels and they're fishing 30-pound test.
Gotcha.
That's a huge snap swivel. Downsize your tackles, but buy quality tackle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you put that snap swivel closer to the bait, excuse me, that snap swivel could look like what that Islander's chasing.
Okay.
So, school thought.
So if the Islander's chasing the bubble trail from the snap swivel or from the swivel, if you will, and the Wahoo sees that he's not paying attention, obviously that's an opportune time for the Wahoo to try to eat the Islander that's trying to eat the snap swivel, if you will, if you follow that chain. And at 7 or 8 knots, that's pretty much what everybody kind of pulls at anyway. So you're saying the closest to the boat and the farthest from the boat are the 2 that you want to try and target your Wahoo with. The rest of them are all dolphin, sailfish,
Yeah.
tuna.
And you'll get, the Wahoos will eat all that too, but close to the boat, either pull something deep, whether it's a lip plug or the planer, And a planer is very effective on everything. You'll catch a giant dolphin or your downrigger, maybe not a downrigger.
Yeah.
Get that down deep, closest to the boat, with a ballyhoo combo or whatever, or planer. And then your long one, something back there quiet.
But they're typically a little bit larger baits versus the rest of the baits that are within your spread.
Just remember this. The bigger the bait, the more drag that bait has. So if you're pulling on a planer or you're putting on a downrigger ball or a lead, the bigger the bait, the more resistance, the higher that pulls it back up in the water. So bigger's not always better. I like when I used to downrigger fish, I always put my smallest baits on the downrigger because it would stay down and not lift that ball up.
Not lift, yeah.
So
didn't have as much resistance in the water.
But generally, if you're finding dolphin and sailfish, you're going to find the wahoos. They're kind of in that same area. But wahoos tend to sink in the daytime. Early morning, they're up higher in the surface, and then daytime, they'll get a little bit deeper. So get something deep.
So the deeper you can get the bait, the more effective it is, and the more likely it is to get bit because it's staying in their strike zone for a longer period of time.
I caught a 99 on the Jester, 99-pound wahoo on the charter as a little 14-year-old kid. Jerry Seaman came down to help me gaff it. I was like, no, I got it. And it got in the prop, and it was his fault because he left the
bridge.
And then the very next day, and that was on the shotgun. It was a 32-ounce, always on the shotgun, 32-ounce, and we had a solid blue. That was our color, solid blue Islander with a ballyhoo. Very next day, we catch 103, and the thing, he goes, I'm not coming off the bridge. And I hit that thing wrong with the gaff, and it pulled the gaff out. Got it, stuck it with the other gaff, and Jerry's like, looked at me, but we got the gaff back. And I was like, well, it didn't get in the prop, so what do you want? And that was in July, on 27 fathom. And both those fish came in the exact same spot because it was our bottom fishing spot.
Gotcha.
So they stack up. When you find one wahoo, there's generally more wahoos.
So don't leave that
they're
area.
School.
Don't get too far away from that area if you do take a knockdown.
Anytime you catch a fish, work that area for a while, but pay attention where the current's going, because if the current's going 3 knots north and you stay in the same spot, that body of water is in an hour 3 miles away.
Yeah.
So you got to pay attention to your currents.
Gotcha.
Or structure.
It's a lot to learn, a lot of good, solid information for you guys and gals out there to take advantage of. Hopefully, if you're going fishing inshore, we talked about some black drum, the potential of the tarpon starting to feed pretty good here in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, there's some redfish and some trout starting to wiggle around those shorelines as well. Hopefully, you guys and gals will get a chance to go catch them. And for those of you that are going offshore, man, take this show, go back and re-listen to this show again, whether you listen to it on Facebook or whether you listen to it on our podcast here at catchamemory.outdoors.com. You can click on that archive tab, and it'll go straight to the website for WWBC, and you can listen to that archive show. Listen to these tips over again. Good, solid, lifetime achievement award winner right here, right? Homegrown boy from Merritt Island, Captain Kyle Weaver. Appreciate you stopping in and helping with the show today.
No problem.
Lots of great info. Until next week, hopefully you guys and gals do exactly what we're going to do. Get out there and catch yourselves a memory.